All right, all right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to night 3 of F.L.O.'s 7 Words, a week of spiritual emphasis. F.L.O., which stands for Fellowship, Love, Outreach, and Worship, is a ministry of young adults by young adults. We focus on safe spaces for genuine dialogue that will help us grow in our spiritual walk with God and gain a deeper understanding of Him. So over the last couple of days, we have been talking about the theme endurance. So on the first night, we talked about persistence and what does that mean and what does that look like. Just a couple of quick recaps of things that were discussed. We are running this race, and we also have to think about who is watching us as we run this race and who is around us and who we can help. We know that this is not something that we are doing alone. We talked about choices and what we are doing. We talked about active and passive persistence in this walk. Then last night we got into weight, and what does that mean? We looked at emotional, physical, spiritual weight. You know, how long are we carrying the weight that we're going to have when we're ready to give it up to Christ? And one of the final things that we talked about last night is the weight that we carry are often the desires of our heart. So about fleshly things and not spiritual things. But tonight we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about joy. So we have a great panel discussion again for you tonight. We've got Rob Harris, we've got Susan Harris, Anderson Regis, and Alexia Scott Mitchell coming to you guys tonight. But first, let's watch a quick little video on why we run this Christian race.
Run the race because my God is at the end, and the chance of me being with Him, unencumbered by, the various challenges, is at the end of that race. And so I run each day trying to get there to be with my God. Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another F.L.O.W Presents, and we're about to talk about the joy of it all. You heard our names. Hopefully you've been with us the last couple of nights. And so again, we know how exciting it is, so we're not going to waste too much time. So we're going to start off, though, reading the scripture today. We're going to start off with reading the scripture today. And we've been pulling from Hebrews 12, 1 through 4 all week, and we're going to continue to do so all week up until Saturday. So if you're at home with us, look it up, Hebrews 12, 1 through 4, maybe from the Amplified version. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, who by faith have testified to the truth of God's absolute faithfulness, stripping off every unnecessary weight and the sin which so easily and cleverly entangles us, let us run with endurance and active persistence the race that is set before us, looking away from all that will distract us and focusing our eyes on Jesus, who is the author and perfecter of our faith, the first incentive for our belief, and the one who brings our faith to maturity, who for the joy of accomplishing the goal set before him, endured the cross, disregarding the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God, revealing his deity, his authority, and the completion of his work. The joy set before him. All right, guys, you know the question I'm about to ask. Whoever's ready, be ready and get forward. Go for it. What does joy have to do with endurance? Anderson, I know you was ready because you came at me from the gate this morning. So, okay, go ahead, Mrs. Harris.
Thank you. I was actually going to say really quickly that Sorry, I was going to say really quickly that you have to know you have to have motivation to run. So the joy is almost like your fuel to get to the end of the race. If you don't have joy, if there's nothing that is even remotely exciting about this journey or motivating about this journey, then you can't run. Or it'll be hard to finish, I should say that.
Lexia, you got it?
Yes, I got it. Sorry. So I agree with Susan. I mean, she said it. It's, knowing your why, right? And knowing what your purpose and what you're trying to accomplish. What is the end goal? When you know the end goal and you have your direction, um, it makes, like you said, it makes the race easier to it makes the race easier to run. Doesn't necessarily take away the hardship, right? But because I think sometimes people read the joy and expect, bed and roses, and that's not the case. But it's the purpose and the goal and the finished product that you're gonna get at it, what gives you the joy to endure through the race. So yeah.
Um, and I agree with both what Susan and Alexia is saying. For me, when I get in the kitchen and I know I have to cater for 200 people, I have to cater for an event that we're having, I don't want to get up and cook all that food. But what makes me get up is the joy I get from that. You know, the pain, the being on my feet for 8 to 12 hours before the event start doesn't matter. I feel it after the fact, but while I'm going through, because of how much I enjoy what I do, it it's the pain is obsolete. So there needs to be, in anything that we do, there must be joy in order to complete it. If we don't have, if there is no joy, we're gonna find it very difficult to finish that race, to finish that degree, to finish whatever it is, if we don't enjoy it.
So I know everybody's being cute, but we talking about the Christian lifestyle, right? And we're supposed to be a young adult channel, so I'm not going to be cute. If you can't find joy in being a Christian, it's going to be hard to be a Christian. Everything you do is going to feel like labor. Every single thing. If you can't find um, how to be excited in this walk of faith, much like many of us know, you just don't walk it. And okay, I'm not going to speak in generalizations. I remember distinctly, I shared yesterday how I reached a point in my Christian experience where I was like, yo, church stinks. Like, no, it sucks. Like, I don't want to do this. There's no benefit in doing this, right? And yes, I thought of it as a benefit thing. Like, I'm giving my time. I'm coming to church every Saturday. I'm getting up in the morning. But what's the point and purpose of this all? And so when I got to college, I went to school in Chicago. I mean, I graduated June 20 something 2004. I was in Chicago by like July 7th, 8th, 2004. I was out. And I could probably count on my extremities the amount of times I went to church during that period, because it was like, what's the point, right? There's no joy in it. There's a purpose. So I gotta ask you out, the people that we're talking about, like how does one find that joy? Like, where do we begin to find the joy, particularly when as we mentioned yesterday, there are so many weights being put on us, right? You look at the length of the race, you see people at the end of the race, quote unquote, but not looking too happy, like make you wonder, why should I even do this? So how do you find the joy in it?
So I'll say, um, for from my perspective, um, there's definitely joy that has to come from having a relationship with Christ and keeping your eyes focused on Him. And you know, I have a similar experience. Um, I was a youth leader at my church, and had just gone through a lot of church hurt. You know, there was a period of time where the same people that were sort of nurturing me and saying, "Oh, we think you'd be great at this," were the same ones that were double guessing everything, second guessing everything I said. There were always these, um, just essentially undermining me. And I remember thinking to myself, what's the point of being here? Like, why am I even involved in all of this if all I'm going to do is have to deal with this, like if I'm having to deal with hypocrisy, if I'm having to deal with people, talking about me, or um I don't know, like just not feeling supported, not feeling loved. Like, what's the point? And I stopped going to church as well. Like, I mean, for a good period, and even vowed to never be involved in church ever again. And I think for me, what sort of brought my joy back is that I took my eyes off of the people and started really looking at what God was doing in my life and for people in my life. And just knowing that one, um, God had so much in store for me, and seeing that at like really pivotal times in my life, even when I wasn't where I was supposed to be, when I prayed to him, he was like answering my prayers. Things that I honestly I did not deserve. Like he was answering and coming through for me. That's where my joy came from. And I feel like if we're talking about the Christian walk and how you find joy, I think your joy, first you have to think about or remember that your joy can't come from anybody else. It's going to have to come from your relationship with God, and understanding and being comfortable with your relationship with God, and knowing that it's not going to be, or it doesn't have to be like everybody else's.
Let me back that up. What Susan is saying. So we look at Nehemiah 8:10 that says, "For the joy of the Lord is your strength." We also look at Galatians 5:22 and 23. Yeah, 22 and 23. And we all know that's the fruit of the spirit. And the second fruit is joy. Joy itself is used over 200 times in the Bible, showing its importance and how relevant it is to this race that we're running. There is no way we can possibly do this. Like you said, Rob, there's no way we can be a Christian without joy. It's impossible. It's impossible to say, hey, I truly worship the God, the creator of heaven and earth, of everything that we see and everything that we understand, and have no joy. This true worship, joy is a product of true worship.
No, I concur with what everybody's saying. I it's you I just echo what everybody's saying in terms of you have to have some sort of joy, and your joy, like Susan said, it has to be anchored in Christ. It has to be anchored in him and in the relationship that you have with him, because everything else is fleeting, right? Everything else is, we are fickle. One minute we're sure, the next minute we're not sure. One minute we're happy, the next minute we're sad. And I think the joy, the true joy, especially in the context that Hebrews is talking about, because we are talking about enduring a race, right? And we talked about the weight that we have to carry sometimes in the race. We understand the hardships. Christ said, "The world hated me," right? So this Christian walk isn't going to be, if they hate me, they're gonna do just as what they did to you, as they, as how much as they hate me, right? So we see those examples, and the how he talked about how, they treated him, and that our Christian walk may just not be any different from his, in terms of the treatment that we get, and to endure um, that mental trauma, that mental exhaustion daily, over a period of years. You have to be anchored in Christ. You have to be sure in this walk. This is not a walk where you can, be half in, half out if you're actually going to do it. You have to, it's a choice that you make, and it's a choice that Christ made, because in him, he wanted, his joy came from the fact that he was going to save us, right? And reconcile us to God. So we have to know why we are on the journey, and the relationship, like Susan talked about, it's a daily thing. We have to, it's almost like a plant. If you don't water the plant, it ain't gonna grow. If you don't feed it the right thing, it's not gonna grow. So if we don't seek him daily, if we don't read daily. How we get to know him is not just, you know, even though the nature tells you about him, but it's not just that, but seeking him daily with his word and knowing him and seeking the Holy Spirit. I think he gives you that joy and that peace that passes all understanding through this walk.
I hear all that y'all are saying. And I think really the key to it is recognizing two things. The first is joy has a feeling inside of it, but it's not necessarily a feeling, it's a mindset. And here's the biggest thing. I think because we give them practical advice, like as much as it's spiritual, this is practical advice. Like
Mm-hmm.
I am not recommending this, but if you wanted to throw the God out of what we're saying, all of what we talked about this week is beneficial. All of it. I think the God in it just proves how awesome and real he is. But you know what I'm saying? Like that's for you to pick up, right? Audience member, that's for you to pick up whoever's watching it. I'm saying that God in it is what makes it dope. But this is just practical advice. Anyway, it says in the Hebrew stuff, that's my key scripture for tonight though. It says, for the joy set before him. Sometimes we get we get lost in the moment. And the cool thing about joy is it's something that you got to set before you and move towards. All right, so what am I talking about? Like runners run at first because there's an outcome that they're looking for, that they're looking to establish. And it's that outcome that motivates them to go through it, right? When you work out, if you're working out for a specific look, it's like you set that look in your mind that said, okay, that's what I want to be. And so therefore you work and move through moments because you're thinking about how you're going to be. It's for the joy set before you that allows you to endure the muscle strain, the fatigue, um, the tiredness of it all, like the physical exhaustion, not just the muscle fatigue, but like the physical exhaustion that you experience. And I sometimes feel like that's the key that we don't actually establish within ourselves. That actually makes it hard to endure or build endurance because it's like we misplace our joy. We're looking for it in a moment, which is really happiness. And then when it's gone, it's like, well, what happened? I can't do this. It's like, nah, you misplaced your joy with happiness. So I want to hear what y'all think about that.
So in my studies on joy, because I'm gonna be honest, like for me, this morning I said to you, Rob, I said, joy is a choice, not a feeling. The issue we have a lot of times with things like joy and love is that we're taught that these things come because of external circumstances, but they don't. Love isn't a feeling. Love is a principle. Love says, love says, you know what? No matter how you're acting, I'm going to act towards you how I know I'm supposed to. Love says, I might dislike you, I might hate you, but you know what? I'm still going to do what I know is expected of God for you. Joy is no different. Joy says for me, suffering, right? When it comes to suffering, we look at Paul who suffered all types of things, shipwreck, imprisonment, beatings, getting tossed off of a cliff, and he's still able to get up and say, like, yeah, I suffer joyfully for what's coming. I'm like, yo, you're crazy. Joyfully. I'm throwing hands. You know what I mean? Like, but he suffered those things because he was looking towards the future. Same thing with Christ. Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane, he called out to his father, like, if there's another way, let there be. But ultimately, your will be done. He was willing to go through it because he was looking at the future. He wasn't looking at his circumstances. He got joy in that moment because of what he knew would come. Paul got joy in his moment because of in those moments of persecution and suffering because of what he knew was to come. Joy is internal for us. Happiness is circumstance. It's based off of circumstance. Oh, I got a new toy today. Oh, I got $100 today. Oh, I got a compliment today, or whatever it may be. I got the house I wanted today. I got the car I wanted today. Those are all external circumstances. Joy is internal. Joy for me is a gift. It is a gift that comes from God. When the Bible talks about the strength, joy, the joy of the God will be your strength. That speaks of a gift. So, for me, joy is more than just it's not an emotion. It's a choice. You have to choose. Like you said, and I'm going last point. You may start something because you have to do it, but find that you love it. Um, and you can continue doing it even if you don't get paid. You don't mind doing it. There's two things for me like that. There's the Bible and there's cooking. I can do either one of those things and not be paid for it, and I'll be good. Like, it won't bother me that I'm not getting a check. But I just want to put that out there.
So the difficulty that I'm having with this is the idea that, and I hear the examples of Christ in Gethsemane, and like these are very real things that happen. And so, like, I get that. I just feel like it's a lot more difficult when you are in a situation where, like, it's one thing for me to, Paul was shipwrecked, and he was able to say, I take joy in my suffering and things like that. Looking at what's set before you as a solution is difficult when in the moment my loved one is being diagnosed with cancer, or I find out that I'm dying, or there are just so many situations where I feel like, as much as we look to the Bible for these examples, and I fully believe the word of the Lord, sometimes when I hear things like that, like, look at Jesus, he died and he was able to get through it because he had the joy of the Lord, and yes, that is very true. At the same time, it's kind of like, yeah, but like, this stuff is like happening in my life right now, and it's very difficult to see past somebody really close to me, losing somebody really close to me. And then it's like, okay, when we're talking about the joy set before, it's like, what is that joy in a situation like this? So, this one might answer, oh, you're going to see this person again in heaven. But then the question is, well, why they have to be taken right now? You know what I'm saying? And so I definitely agree with you guys in terms of joy being a decision, like this concept that you can choose to be joyful by what you choose to dwell on, because Alexia said that, like, you have to meditate on the word day and night and things like that. However, I think, having these conversations in general with people, and even, sometimes with me, like I said, it's a hard concept for me because I just think about the people that I lost, and it makes it really difficult when you're talking about the Christian race and saying, yeah, sometimes you're gonna have to go through that, but don't worry, there's joy on the other side. It just doesn't. Anyway, that's my thought.
I like to I wanna talk to that, right? Because I think you're absolutely right. Again, I think what we want to do to separate flow from other places is not to be so heavily minded that we're no earthly good. And I think, Susan, you're talking to the reality of somebody going through something right now, or have gone through something recently where they were like, I'm sorry, I don't see the joy in it. And so I want to introduce a word that I think is firmly connected to every word that we're going to talk about, which is faith. But before I end up there, I want to go back to the realities of I'm reading a wonderful book called The Body Keeps Score. And it's a book about trauma. And one of the things it talks about is if you go through something severe enough, it actually inhibits you from being able to visualize beyond the moment. Like, it's an actual thing that happens in your brain where you can't even begin to formulate future thoughts because your body, in so many ways, is concerned about the present, if not more so the past, because of what happened to you. And so I think there's something real that we need to talk to that speaks to that. This idea of, like, sometimes you go through something that changes you on a very like it's not just visceral, but like almost a cognitive, neurological, like it's a chemical thing, right? Like we move beyond this idea that depression is just a feeling. No, sometimes people have chemical imbalances that lead them to depression. Like winter hits people hard because that vitamin D that they get for the summer, that slight changes them on such a level that they respond differently to the winter. Which is why I think as we talk to young adults, as we hear, and I've told each of you on intimate levels about certain things, there comes a point when it's just about faith. Like at the end of the day, it's about that don't make sense faith, right? And it's the faith that kids have and parents that throw them up. Like if a baby really understands what's happening, it wouldn't make sense. Like you just threw me into the air. Like it's not where I belong, right? But there's an inherent faith that they have when they're caught. Now, I'm just follow me. I'm gonna keep this condensed so everyone can jump in. But when they're dropped, right, the kid cries, and the parent, sometimes gets shocked. Do you know how many times it really takes for a kid to not trust that they'll get caught again? It's really the consistency in being dropped and how they're responded to when they're dropped. See, the thing is, with kids, there's this faith that because I know you, right, I'm going to trust that you'll catch me again. That was traumatic. That was hard, but you comforted me. So what I'm talking about when it comes to thinking about the joy, and I think my wife is real about this, there's an element of faith that you have to commit to. But I'm sure somebody's out there saying, well, that's a spiritual thing. No, it's not, because you have faith when you go to the therapist, which I'm also encouraging. You know what your faith is? That they might be able to help you. You're putting faith in this process that it might be able to help you. We exhibit faith all the time, so I don't even like buy this whole idea that it's just a spiritual thing. Faith is a trust in the unknown until it's known, right? So you have faith that it's going to rain until it rains. You have faith that it's going to be sunny until it's sunny. Like you have faith that there are planets out there beyond ours. And for those that are atheists and agnostic and whatnot, you have faith in the scientist that said he saw that and put it in there. Like, so we all display faith. And I think with this joy thing, you got to have a little bit of faith. Look at Alexia. What you got? Come on, share it.
My mind, my mind is going because I agree with a lot of things, but I think I'm also conflicted with some things, right? I think, going back to what Anderson was saying, I wholeheartedly agree that it's a choice, but I also agree that it's also an emotion, right? Because we talked about the Bible talks about how a joyful heart is a good medicine, right? When you're in a joyful spirit, right? It's not just a choice in some moments, it's also an emotion that can carry you and propel you to keep moving. So I think it's both. In certain instances where it's a choice, yeah, it's a choice for the long run, right? But God gives us these joyful moments in our times of struggle, right? He gives us some, a little ease, a little ease of the pressure in our moments, and that could be through our children, that could be our friends, that could be through encouragement of other people, where we get glimpses of hope, right? So I do think it's both. And in terms of, you know, faith, I agree with that, Rob, but I also believe that it's 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 not void of evidence, if that makes sense. I think faith. I don't think it's necessarily just believe in something out of or just cause, right? I think faith is something that is that I have my faith because of this, right? I have my faith because I know that Christ died for me. I know that Christ existed. I know it's not because I heard some, whatever. I've experienced him in my life, so I know. Just like the baby, like I may I may get nervous when you drop me or whatever the case is. And that's in its a human context, but I really believe, just like as clinicians, when we ask people to, when they're in traumas and we try to see, okay, how can we adjust some of the things that you may have going on in your life? How can we remove some of the negative things that are in your life that is not beneficial to you? I think we also have to operate with our spiritual lives that way. And sometimes we treat our spiritual life as something that is disconnected from our actual lives, as something that is over there and it's not connecting everything. And I think we have to get to the point where we understand that the spiritual aspect connects everything and makes everything work, not the other way around. And until we really truly understand that, we're always going to be in a place of deficit. We're always going to be in a place where we're saying, oh, but I'm still this, but I'm still that. We know that there's struggles, but even when we talk about yesterday in terms of how we move on the journey with other people, this is not an individualistic race. This is a race with everybody, right? So even with that perspective, when we do, or when we are going to have our alone times where we struggle, we have where God provides. If we believe that He provides, we have to believe that He's going to provide for us in our weakest moments, and whatever that looks like. But that comes from the faith and from the relationship, because it talks about in Psalm 16:11, you make known the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy, and at your hand are pleasures forevermore. This is not something that is abstract or that is wait until the glory kingdom comes.
Yeah.
We experience these things now, so I think we
But
have to be mindful of making it seem like it's out there. It's the spirituality is not attached to everything else. I think we have to change our mindset and our perspective when it comes to that.
so let me respond to you and your point with me. It depends on who you're talking to. Like, if you're talking to somebody who's already a believer and who's already experienced God, then it's a different type of faith that they're applying to, right? Because if they've seen it happen, then they have faith. Because to me, I gotta say, Lexi, faith isn't always based on what you've seen happen to you. Faith is the hope that it will. Like, I think that's actually biblical definition. You know what I'm saying? Faith is the evidence
Things
of
unseen.
things
Of things
seen, but not
unseen.
hope. Things unseen, but hope for.
Hope for.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So I'm talking to the person who isn't a believer. Right? I'm talking to the person who's gone through some things, who's lost that faith. It actually takes faith to get it back. Right? It takes you saying, I know I went through these things. I know this is what I experienced, but let me, and I put it to my clients like this sometimes, what you got to lose, right? Because I can't even tell you hope because it's going to be good, because that's exactly the thing that you've lost hope in. You've lost hope in things being good. So I'm like, well, take a chance, right? What you got to lose? It's already bad. And if you have that outlook, then it's going to stay bad. But if you can trust, if you can put faith out there and say, well, maybe there's something different, I can try it. And I think that's what every individual really has. And I think that's, to your point, Alexia, I think that's for me, that's my faith, because I believe everybody has that measure of the spirit in them that allows them, no matter how bad it gets, atheist, agnostic, there's something in them that doesn't die, right? That makes the rape victim, the abuse victim say, I may have all these responses, but I'm gonna go to the therapist, right? I'm gonna have this one friend, I'm gonna do this one thing. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I have a question. Um, and yeah, my question is, what's the difference between, because Alexia said we get these moments of joy every, moment by moment. It's right now, right? If I gotta suffer through things, right, to get and get the type of joy that Christ is offering, but I can smoke weed, I can have sex, I can do a number of things to give me joy right now. Why is it like? I guess my question is, why would I want His joy when I can find things that are going to give me joy right now that I may not even necessarily have to deal with the stuff that Jesus went through? Because the Bible says, if He, like Alexia, you use the text, if they did it to me, they're going to do it to you. You're going to suffer great things if you're a follower of Christ. Like, why should I be so fixed on the joy set before me if I can find joy in certain things right now?
So I'm gonna jump in here. So Alexia,
Great question. Great question.
I don't believe that joy is, I think what you described is happiness and joy, and sometimes we may think it's interchangeable, but it's really not. Those moments of happiness come from external things. Joy is an internal. You know, me walking into my house and seeing my 2 year old son screaming "Papa, Papa," that gives me that makes me very happy. You know, my joy comes from, though, when I'm not around him. Um, my joy comes from from what I have inside. How do I put it? I'm trying to make it as plain as possible. So you have happiness, you have joy. Happiness requires external circumstances, but joy requires internal. When you look at the joy that we're talking about, it's a joy that once again we make. It has to be a choice. That choice is determined by, not by the external things, but by ourselves and what it is we're going through. For me, I can choose to be joyful in while I'm going through a storm, while my house is on fire. Why? Because I have my life. There are reasons to be joyful, just as there's reasons for happiness. Susan made a great had a great question. Why is Christ why is that type of joyfulness why is the joyfulness that Christ has necessary if I could find joy in all these other things? And when she said that, I'm like, automatically, that's not joy, because joy isn't temporary. So when we look at these things, we
That's
have
my answer.
joy is everlasting. And you know what I mean? The Bible tells us that joy is everlasting. For us as human beings, we're so used to happiness and not really, and then we associate happiness with joy, but it's two separate things. Happiness is external, joy is internal. Joy is everlasting, happiness is temporary.
Yo, Anderson, um, I got to go back to the word for this for everybody out there. The practical response. Oh, you got something? Well, I got ladies first.
I was gonna say that Mike Tyson has been smoking weed for 40
I'm
40 years, and he's
done.
been joyful. So if I keep doing
Has
the
he been
things,
joyful?
if
Has
I
he
if I
though?
continue to do the things that bring me joy, then I feel like that makes it everlasting. But anyway, I'm done.
I can't.
um, I'm gonna give a practical answer and then support it biblically. It's what you set before you that will determine the type of joy that you experience internally, as Anderson is saying, and not happiness. Right? The person that puts in their mind a healthy family, right? And this, I'm gonna operationalize healthy, right? For my scholars out there, or my college students, I'm gonna operate. Healthy is we can navigate disagreements. We don't put each other down. Our children feel safe. Our home is a safe space. We respect each other, right? If I put that before me, then my actions that I go throughout my dating process and even my individual process in shaping myself for dating is worth it. And I find joy. So when the young lady rejects me, I consider the thing that I've had before me as my joy and say, okay, this ain't that bad. It hurts, but it's not that difficult, right? When certain things happen throughout that process, I still find joy in whatever's going on because I still have yet to obtain the thing that's set before me. And I can't, like this scripture, I didn't even need anything else for tonight because I was like, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Well, okay, what was the joy set before him? Well, this is what I love to tell everybody. It was you and me. God was so excited that you and I, and get this is the crazy part, that you and I would have the opportunity to be saved. It doesn't even, like, our salvation is guaranteed on his end, but we got to still accept it. So he put his life at risk for a thing that you can choose to reject. And that was joyful enough for him to endure the cross. You feel like that's real love. Like that's something that he felt was worth it enough to engage in everything. And I'm saying for people practically, what are you setting before you? What are you establishing as your endpoint? Like, what is it that you are looking forward to that allows you to experience that joy in the moment? Because if you don't have that thing in mind, that you're going to be happy at times, but you're also going to be sad at others. You won't find that joy, in my opinion.
So I too have a question. So, you know, being that, we all here, like, we are Christians and we are seeking our Christ daily, right? our goal is not necessarily to speak to other Christians because they know what we know, right? Our goal is to really go out to the world and talk to other people and help help them and show them how God has blessed us, just and that they can be blessed and receive salvation at the same time, right? What do you say to those people, like Susan is saying, right? What do you say to those people in terms of what are they this conversation? What are they putting before themselves? They say, "Well, I'm putting before me a good family. I'm putting before me, I'm trying to get that bag. I'm putting what do you say? Let's be realistic because I still don't want us to scoot around the spirituality part of it and be real in terms of what our purpose is. So what do we say to those people?
You and I always go back and forth
I
because
know, but go ahead.
I don't
You
I don't
got
think
it.
you don't always have to
You don't know
expressly
what.
say.
Go ahead.
I wasn't even done saying what I was saying. Someone else what you were saying. This is
Go
this is
ahead. Go
us for
ahead.
real.
This is really us. Sorry, guys.
You don't always have to expressly state spirit in order to know that's the move of the spirit. That is something that comes to me by faith. And so my what I come to people with, my first thought is, why should I even try this whole, faith thing, this whole church thing? Everyone usually says church thing first, right? Let's whole church thing, yada yada. And I say, because do you really want to miss out on the potential that heaven is real? Like all the things that we gamble at. My practical approach to people and why I say, what you got to lose in terms of putting a little faith out there is we know what the world is right now. And yes, it has good things, but it sure got a whole lot of anxiety producing things. It has a lot of things that lead us to do those things that Susan was talking about. Lead us to smoke because it calms our nerves, it eases us, it takes us away, leads us to drink, leads us to have sex, leads us to binge watch Netflix. I mean, it don't have to always be these out of the end vices, right? It could be something as simple as like it leads me to lose myself in video games or fantasy books or yada 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 yada, because we recognize that the space that we exist in isn't great. So my answer, Alexi, the people I talk to, I say is, but here's God telling you, I got more to come, right? I got more to come. There's more than this space right here. Is that what you were talking
That's not
about?
what I'm. No. So I'm asking. Maybe Susan has something for this, but I'm talking about because that sounds like a conversation that was already introduced with what you're talking about the spirituality. I'm talking you getting to know you meeting someone, right? And um you're now they've shared certain things with you and has nothing to do, they didn't bring up church or anything like that. What do we say, because we want to reach people outside of right the walls, right? So what do we say to people or to young adults who are not necessarily coming to you to say, how do I get into church, right? What do you say
Mm,
to
yeah.
what do we say to those people? So I'm asking for the
Um,
upcoming disciples. Go
so
ahead.
so my I hear what you're saying, Alexia, and my thought on it is similar to, first of all, Rob, you said something before about um having a little bit of faith, like what are you going to lose? I think a lot of times we like to we're more comfortable dealing with the devil we know. And so if I already know what this stuff is going to do to me, I'm comfortable with that. But trusting something that I've never really had an experience with, I don't know. And that kind of leads to what Alexia is saying. I think, Alexia, to answer your question, um, I think we can say the only thing that we can do is talk from our personal experiences. And the only way that anybody's going to hear what we have to say is if they're at the point of desperation. That's for me is the truth. When usually people hear you the most when they realize they ran out of options, or like they're at the point where they're like, you know what, everything else has failed. I might as well try Jesus, or I might as well try to go in a different direction. So I think it's a combination of speaking from your own personal experience and saying, look, this is what I experienced. This is what Christ did for me. I was able to go through, I don't know, getting kicked out of my house and doing X, Y, and Z and still having that joy in the Lord, was able to provide for me, like that. And so it's a combination of that and being able, or them having an encounter with Christ themselves, or getting to the point where there is a level of where they realize, like you said, Alexia, earlier, their deficit, that will never measure up. We're always going to need Christ. We're never going to have everything in us that we need to make it. Yeah, so that's my thought.
Man, Susan, that's powerful. When I'm speaking to Christians, I talk Bible. Christians know the Bible, so we talk Bible. When I'm speaking to people who are on the fence, I talk life. It's that simple. Reality is we've all gone through something. The most powerful tool in our when it comes to evangelism or ministry is our own personal testimony. The Bible is very important, 100%. But if I tell you about the life I used to live back in New York, it'll probably have more of effect on you because you could relate to that. If I tell you about, my adulterous ways that used to be and all of that, it'll probably, sit well with you because you could relate to that. But you can't relate to, oh yeah, John 3:16, bro, nah, they're not going to hear that. So life, what I've learned in my walk is life on life. Your testimony is and don't carry it across, like you're telling your testimony, but it's just you're explaining your life and why it is you are at the point you are now. With Christians, like I said, we speak the Bible because you know what I know. You may not be where I am, I may not be where you are, but you're supposed to, yeah, Rob, you're right. You're supposed to know what I know. So we speak the
Basics.
Bible. But for my young folks out there, understand that you have people in the church that lived a life that you're living now. And they understand how destructive. You guys spoke about weed and alcohol and all of this. I'm going to be real. I did all of that. It feels good. It feels good to go on the block.
The lies.
And it feels good to go on the block, smoke a blunt,
Lies.
pour some
It's
Henny.
good you don't know that then. It's good you don't know that.
It feels good, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, what we don't know is what we're doing to ourselves. That's the problem. My father was an alcoholic. You don't know, most of us as young Black men, it's sad to say, we don't know our pops. So we don't know what it is that we really struggle with. We don't know what's going to trigger us into something becoming an addiction. So for me, while those things feel good, they have side effects, bad side effects. Walking with Christ, we have side effects too, but they all are beneficial in the best way for us.
So
Go ahead.
my final word is, I swear Alexis don't like what I say and how I say it. Because I swear I said the same thing y'all said. I swear I do. And I shouldn't swear. I don't have any authority on earth to swear. So anyway, my final word is, when it comes to joy, seeing Alexia don't think I was being personal. I am doing what I'm doing here because I did exactly what I was saying to everyone else. I looked at the life that we're living and the life that God has to me. And that's worth attaining. Like, who wants to miss out on eternity? Like, who? That's my reality, right? Like, if you're gonna put something before you, to put the best thing and work towards it. Like I tell anyone, right? If I live a godly lifestyle, what, I care about other people, I'm compassionate, right? I attend this community of believers and love, hopefully, right? I know how to deal better. If I do all that, and let's just say by happenstance, there is no God, did I really live a bad life? But I see what people who like drink every night, I see what they look like. I seen that with my own eyes, right? Um, I've also experienced the heartburn of drinking beer. It's like, I don't know why you do that. It's nasty, right? I know what it's like to not feel like you're in control of your faculties with weed, and I get that's exactly what you want to feel, but I don't like feeling out of control, right? I know what it's like to try to balance multiple partners, right? And I know what it's like to feel good in the 2 minute plus of sex, and everyone out there trying to act like they do more. You're lying to yourself. You got to work your way up to that. So stop. Tell the truth and share the devil. I know what it's like to try to experience that.
Not you,
You
Susan.
know, since
Not you.
she don't know what that is. Anyway, this is an adult programming, people. I know what it's like to try to feel like you got to seek after that and not. So I said, well, let me put this thing that he tells me before me on faith. And from doing that, I found the joy. So I tell people, if you really want to find the joy, you gotta have a little faith in what God is offering you. And what He's offering you is you, is a willingness to love you and all of you. That's my way.
All right, real
Uh,
quick, my wrap up is this. My bad, Lexi. I'm
you
gonna let the
just.
ladies.
I'm
I'm gonna
kidding. I'm
let y'all
kidding.
go last. That wasn't my wrap up. That was a response to.
I'm kidding. I'm
My
kidding.
wrap up is this. The concept of joy while going through adversity to build is difficult to understand. I mean, let's be real. You got Christians that's been in this thing for 30, 40 years, and it's still difficult for them to be joyful when they face adversities. At this point, we have to look at the other things we look to for, I guess, that feeling of joy, and see really, is it beneficial for us? And if it's not, then what's the other option? Really and truly, everybody has a problem. A lot of people have problems with God these days. That's cool. But before you make that decision that you're not going to go that direction, get to know him. Make an informed decision. Get all the facts. Don't just make a decision based on what you hear other people saying. Make an informed decision. Study for yourself. Check them out. What do you have to lose, like Rob says?
I agree, and I had brought up the question. My wrap up is my wrap up. I had brought up the question because I do want us to remember the part of the witnesses, right? And a part of, because I think even in the church, how many times can we say that we can count on all our 10 fingers that we know a good amount of people who have the joy of the Lord on their journey, right? And who exudes that, right? That's really sad. Your whole life, how many people can you say you said that you can say that I know that there's a God because they have the joy of the Lord, right? And that's, you know, I want us to remember when we need to normalize our experiences and not be ashamed of them. We need to normalize our journeys, right? It talks about your testimonies. Normalize sharing your testimonies with people. Normalize sharing where you were and how God took you from there, and you're not trying to go back there because you now have the joy of the Lord. Normalizing those conversations so people can relate. People relate to the fact that, not the fact that, oh, you're in church and you're holy and that thou now. They relate because you've experienced some hardships and they've also maybe at the same place, and they can right, and they can experience it. They can experience that joy of the Lord too. But I oftentimes, one, we are still ashamed of our past, so we are very quiet. We're very quiet in terms of our walk and our joy. People can't tell that we're happy and we're joyful and that we've been saved by grace or whatever the case is, right? So express that to people and keep encouraging people on their journey. So that's my wrap up.
So for me, I would say, on the subject of finding your joy, or where your source of joy comes from, I would summarize by saying, we're running a race with people, but we're all at our own pace, and we're all going to have our own experiences. So just because somebody else's journey looks one way and yours doesn't mean that you're not going in the right direction. Um, and you may not always experience the same joy that somebody else experiences. So because you don't have the same experience as somebody else doesn't mean that that joy doesn't exist for you. We have to keep our eyes on Jesus, and we have to remember that it's his love, the sacrifice that he made for us, and the joy that innately comes with a relationship with him, that is going to keep us on this journey. Um, and ultimately, the thing that I want to leave is that every single one of us knows what it feels like at some point to have been disappointed, or to have heartbreak, um, or to not have been joyful. Um, and so we understand, and nobody has any I guess, unrealistic expectations of anybody else, but we just want you to know that we've been there, and we're all in this together.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I hope everybody received the word. We still got, I can do the math. We still got 3 more days. 3 more days of this conversation, this discussion. And we actually have some guest speakers coming Thursday and Friday. So you won't see this panel as it's made up like this. So please like, subscribe, and share. Let somebody go back and watch it if you receive something. So be blessed.
All right. Well, thank you all again for such an awesome, awesome conversation. Tonight, we talked about joy and what it means to be joyful in this Christian race that we are running, and how do we endure this. So just a couple of key points that were brought up tonight. Joy is the second fruit of the Spirit. Joy is a product of true worship. Anderson said joy is a gift from God, and it's also a choice and an emotion at the same time. And Susan talked about, how do we see past the current situation that you were in to kind of get to that everlasting joy? Rob talked about being so heavenly minded that we are no earthly good, and talked about how it's really about our faith and what we decide to commit to. And then Anderson, again, he talked about, when we're sharing this and we're sharing the joy of the Lord and we're sharing all of this with other people, when we talk to Christians, we're talking the Bible, but when we're talking to others, we're talking life. And it's really about sharing our testimony and trying to allow people to see us for who we truly are and what God is doing and how we can get that joy in our life. So thank you guys once again for a wonderful conversation. Tomorrow, same time again, 7:30 to 8:30, tune in on our YouTube channel. You can watch also via Metro's website. We'll be talking about the cross. So come ready. It's been a great conversation here and then also in our YouTube chat. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and join the F.L.O.W YouTube page and join in the conversation as well. Have a great night. See everybody tomorrow at 7:30.